Well, hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jane. It's lovely to have you here. I was asked if I would do a video just on mordanting, so that is what I am here to do today. Mordanting is the single most important thing in natural dyeing. What a mordant does is that it takes your fibres, your textile fibres, and it adheres to them really tightly, and it also adheres to the pigment really tightly. It forms this bond that can't be easily separated, a chemical bond. If you don't have a mordant, you have your textiles and you have your pigment, but as soon as there's any sunshine, the pigment tends to float away, or as soon as there's any washing, it floats away. So what the mordant does with its tightness is it makes your textiles that you have dyed with plants much more light fast, much more wash fast. So today I am going to be mordanting this pile of wool here, and I am going to be using aluminium potassium sulphate. There have been a few questions have come up on previous videos about mordants. One of them was somebody said that they wanted to avoid all chemicals. Now, I think this is a misunderstanding of chemicals, because there's chemicals in the wool, there's chemicals in your pigment, there's chemicals in the water. Everything is chemicals. So the fact that alum has a chemical name doesn't make it necessarily bad and these things necessarily good. It has to be seen as this is how you get your chemical reaction of the mordant. Somebody else asked whether alum is safe. Now, I would say it's a heck of a lot safer than some of the things that we use for mordants. Aluminium potassium sulphate, you probably already consume it. It's in pickles, it's in lots of baking. If you've ever used a natural deodorant, it's likely to have contained aluminium potassium sulphate. It's in so many things. Other alternative mordants that you see being touted, and I have used them in the past as experiments, are things like rhubarb leaves, and they give off a really poisonous gas, sort of oxalic acid in vapor form, and I certainly wouldn't want to use a lot of that. So alum has been used for centuries, millennia, as a really good, reliable dye mordant. Before that, or when that wasn't available, aluminium sort of plants which took up aluminium from the soil and had it in their leaves or body parts were used. In the UK, that would have been club moss, which is now endangered. Do not buy club moss for dyeing, please. It's not more natural, it's not more eco, it is just, not something to do. Right, so on to the mordanting. I'll put that away because the first step is soaking your wool. So one important thing before you start is that you know how much wool you have. Now, if you're using mini skeins, that's quite easy because you know each one is 20 grams. You just need to count the mini skeins. If you're using leftover wool, for example, get some scales and weigh it all. Right. And then write down however much it is. Okay? Because you're going to need that number when we're working out how much mordant to use. The easiest way to get your mordant all the way through your yarn, and therefore being more effective, is to start with nicely damp wool. So this is 4-ply sock wool. I'm going to make some stripy socks, and I am unwrapping it here. Now, what I would say is, if you're wanting to experiment with botanical dyes, this summer, if you're wanting to join me and look at all of the things that are maybe in your garden already, try out lots of different colours, I would really suggest that you have a project in mind, that you decide what you want to do. Not necessarily have the pattern in mind, but have a project and collect together the yarn or the embroidery threads or whatever it is that you're wanting together at this point. What I'm trying to show in this video is how we can mordant most effectively with the least amount of the alum and the best effects. And that is so much easier if you have more than 20 grams of material at a time. So what I would say is think of a project. I would say go for something that's going to use mini skeins or embroidery skeins, that kind of thing, because then you're going to have lots of chances to get different colours. You know, this is what it's really about. So here I have 10 mini skeins. There's 100 grams of wool here, but each of it is divided nicely into a mini skein. I'm going to get 10 colours for my stripy socks. Right, so I have unwound those and I've made sure that they are nice and loose because I want the water to get into them. But I don't want them to get tangled, so I'm going to tie them together. You could just use a piece of string, but I use these reusable cable ties. Right. And that just allows me to have them like that. Now, I'm going to put them into my bowl of water. I made this water, it's like out of the hot tap kind of temperature. Right, and I'm just going to squish them down. Warm water means that you can soak much faster. Cold water, often the wool doesn't seem to want to take in the cold water. Right. So I am just going to go around, and you can see maybe the bubbles coming up, and make sure that my yarn is right the way underneath here, soaking up all of that water. I might even, now that it's in, top it up a little bit. And now I'm going to walk away for at least 10 hours, ideally overnight, and I will see you tomorrow to actually make up the mordant that will go onto this wool. You don't need to do anything with it, just walk away. So it's the next day. This wool has been soaking all night, and you can see how beautifully plump it is. So what I need to do now is to mix up the mordant and then put this straight in. So I'm going to pop that there, put the water over there. Now the mordant that I'm using is aluminium potassium sulphate. You can see it's quite granular, so it will need some heat to dissolve, and often people put it in a big pan and dissolve it like that. But what I'm going to be doing today is just doing it in a small pan. And the reason for this is that I do not want to be wasting water. But more importantly, I don't want to be wasting heat and energy. So, first of all, I'll put my scales on. I'll put my little pan, which is what I'm going to use, and I am going to zero it. Now, if you remember, we have 200 grams of wool in there, and I want 8% of that weight. Right? Often you see people and they've got like 15% of mordant to fibres. You do not need that. 8% is fine. So what I'm wanting is 16 grams of mordant. So let's see what that is. That was 14 grams, so I only need another couple of grams here. Yeah, another teeny weeny bit. There we are. Right, so I have my 16 grams of mordant. Oops, pop that back in there. In here. And now I need to add some water and heat it up while stirring until all of those grains dissolve. Now I may as well just take a bit of this water from here, because it's all going to go back in here. I do think that, you know, people often refer to, you know, this is eco dyeing and things, and if we're going to use terms like that, we have to be really, really mindful of the energy we're using, the water we're using, all of the different things, as well as the mordants. Right. So we are on my little stove, and I'm just going to heat that up very gently and keep an eye on it. It's a little bit like if you're dissolving sugar for a sugar syrup or something like that. You're just wanting to make sure that all of the grains have dissolved. I really recommend these little stoves, by the way, not just because it keeps you sort of like away from your food part of your kitchen, because although it is perfectly possible to do natural dyeing in a kitchen, it's a little bit messy, and also you're using things that you probably don't want to get near your food. So you should always have a full set of pans and bowls and dishes and things that are separate. And I think having a separate little stove is really useful. It also means that in nice weather you can take it outside, which is much, much better, because do remember, plants and mordants and all of that kind of thing, they give off vapours, and it's you are going to be breathing in. So you need to be in a well ventilated space, whatever you're doing. But if you can be outside, that is even better. Right, this is beginning to heat now. Right, that has all dissolved now, so I'm going to turn off the stove. Turn it off and unplug it. Right, now there is no reason we can't just reuse this water. I'm going to pour the water with the dissolved mordant in it, and let it rinse out as well, just in case there's any stuck. Put that to one side. I'm going to stir this really well. So all I want to do is just to make sure that the mordant is dissolved right the way through the water. Then I'm going to take my skeins, and because the reusable plastic tie is very loose, I can just handle them as one. Bring this bit up here. What I'm going to do is just squeeze out the water that is in them, to kind of make it a little bit like a sponge, so that there is a vacuum within that wool. Plunge it in here while still squeezing it, and then let go. Right. And then this water can just go back on the top. Right, so that is the yarn in the mordant. Very, very simple. And again, I'm going to leave that just to rest in there, to take up the mordant. Every now and again, when I'm passing, I'll fiddle about with it, move it around in the mordant. But otherwise, I'm just going to leave this, I would say, at least 10 hours, ideally overnight. Okay, so I will come back tomorrow and show you what I have. The wool has been sitting in the mordant for 24 hours, and now I'm just going to take it out. I'll look for that, my plastic tag, and you can see why that is useful. But you could just use a piece of string or a bit of cotton thread, like thick cotton thread works very well. And I'm going to gently squeeze that. You don't want your wool to felt, right? So be very, very gentle with it when it's wet. I'm going to pop it in there. That's a mordant. Now, I could reuse that mordant by adding in some extras, or I could assume that because we use quite low quantities of mordant, that most of it is going to now be into this wool because it's attracted to the fibre. My job now is to take this and to put them individually somewhere to dry, each of them hanging on a rack until they are completely dry. And then I'm going to store them in a box somewhere. And I'm going to label the box to say what the kind of wool is and when it was mordanted and what it was mordanted with. Because you always think that you're going to remember these things, but you open a box and it's just cream wool. Can't remember at all. If I had been mordanting this and not intending to store it, so I want to go straight from this to doing some natural dyeing, what I would have to do would be to rinse the mordant off. Because the mordant, there will be little particles of mordant which are not properly attached. And if you went straight from this to using the natural dye, they would float around your natural dye because they're not attached to the textile, and they would still attract the particles of dye. So what you need to do first is to rinse them off. So it's just like rinsing your yarn. And if you were coming to it and this had been stored, you would naturally be rehydrating your yarn anyway, so that also works as a rinse. But just if you're taking it from straight out the mordant into your dye pan, remember to rinse it. And that's basically it. I have written a blog and it has this all step by step because it's a really easy process. But sometimes as soon as there's chemical names and things that you do in a particular order, it can look quite daunting. So I've written a blog and it's step by step, and there is a little download there, and I'll link that underneath here. And I hope that you're going to be joining me on my kind of like journey of natural dyes from the garden over the next few months. See you then.